Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming back to Sarita Talks. Oh my gosh, we have some awesome people. Dear friend, we just realized we know a lot of people in common and some divine connections. Stephen Barbee got a powerful story. I'm looking at his profile right now. He's nationally recognized inspirational, motivational preacher, keynote speaker, mentor, facilitator, life coach, court advocate, prison ministries consultant, and offenders workforce development specialist. That's a mouthful, but
Well,
this is
thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you so much for coming on, Stephen Barbee. And I really want to ask you, Stephen, we were talking about something right before we got on. And it was
Yes.
so interesting. I said, hey, stop it. That's our show. That's our show. It
Yes.
was 3Ds.
It was 4Ds. 4Ds.
Oh, excuse
Yes.
me, 4Ds. I had four
Yes.
fingers. Three.
That's
Yes,
okay. Yeah. But no, I just want to say thank you for giving me an opportunity to come on this platform and, if it's one listener or if it's 1,000 or if it's 1,000,000, it's not the number of listeners, but it's those that have ears to hear. So I just want to tell you, thank you for this opportunity to allow me to come on. And yeah, it is the 4Ds. It's dreams, destruction, disgrace, and deliverance, and that's really the tagline for my life story and my journey. And so I'm just thankful that you give me this opportunity just to share part of my story and testimony, and we can go from there.
Yeah, well, you were telling me a little bit about your youth, and you grew up in the church. I'm another church kid, so tell me, preacher's kid, but we've transformed. I hear.
Yeah,
we got different names.
We're no longer PKs. We're TOS, theologian offsprings. But just that whole church, right? I remember the district meetings, the state meetings, the national meetings. Vacation Bible School. Easter play, Christmas plays, all of those church things that we had to go to, junior usher. So, it's just interesting, how that foundation really is the foundation that my life and I hear your life as well has been built on. And so that's the joy of that foundation being firm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then you were, doing well, started playing sports.
Yeah.
How did sports go?
Yeah. So that first year at Highland Community College playing baseball, got the scholarship, the dream to be on that ball field. And
you're from Kansas.
Yes, well, I grew up in Lawrence, Kansas. Yes, my father, in fact, still lives in Lawrence. Dad is still pastoring, age 87, been preached for 65 years. And so just able to have that father-son relationship, which is so important just in general, not just in the African-American community, but in all communities, to have that father figure to support. And he's been there for me, still is. But, playing baseball, and I was sharing about the grips of addiction. I started drinking there in high school and smoking marijuana. And so then that door of addiction was open. But, back then addiction and drinking was fun. Let's get drunk, let's get high, let's have a little laughter, right? But didn't realize that I had opened a door of addiction. And so my very first semester in college.
Because it creeps up on you.
Yeah.
They used to have weed back in the day. They called it creeper. Well, drug addiction is that creeper.
Yeah, that creeper. You know what I'm talking about.
Next thing you know, you're done. You're cooked.
That's it, right? But just having those moments, and then that first semester when I got my grades and I flunked out, I had a 1.43 GPA.
And you were on a scholarship.
Yeah, gone.
Wow.
And I don't know if you ever lied to yourself, but I have. And that semester I came home and, I started calling these other colleges that had recruited me and said, we know Highland's not a good fit for me. They just don't understand me. But I wasn't telling the whole truth. I was not telling the truth. I flunked out. And so I forget what school I was talking with that particular afternoon. And I heard a second click, this before cell phones. And my father was ear hustling. Yeah, my dad was ear hustling, and he calls me upstairs and then he says, well, son, what are you doing? I said, oh, nothing. He said, no, I heard your last conversation. He said, this is what you're going to have to do. So you're going to have to go back to Highland. You got to face your classmates, your teammates. You're going to have to face yourself. And so here it is. I'm walking back on campus and couldn't play ball that spring. I couldn't play. My good friend, Coach Heinrich, I never forget, he walked me across the street from the dormitory there, and He said, I want to show you this building on campus. And he walked me to the library and he said, people that come to the library, they study and they still eligible. So if you want to stay eligible for next year, come to the library and study. And,
Oh,
just that
shout out to the
opportunity.
libraries, though. Libraries, great places.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I couldn't play baseball that spring because I was ineligible. And so I said, well, let me just walk on the football team in the spring just to stay in shape. Well, I got that football fever again and got my grades back up 3.2, got my scholarship back. And so now it's my freshman year on the football team. And so I always share with people, get people around you that sees in you what you don't see in yourself. And that's potential. Uh, the very first game, tailback blew his knee out. Second game, second team tailback wasn't getting the job done. So my coach called me upstairs and he said, hey, Barbee. I said, yeah. He said, didn't you play running back in high school? And I said, yes. He said, would you consider switching from flanker to running back? And I said, sure. So I switched from flanker to running back. And the very, very first game I ever played in college football, I broke the school rushing record,
Wow.
278 yards and 29 carries, and it's interesting because then my coach kept me there and I began to excel even to a greater extent on the football field. My freshman year, I led the nation all-purpose running. I used to average about 178 yards a game.
Wow.
But as I excelled on the football field, I was having some struggles off the field with my addiction, and I graduated from beer and marijuana to now hard liquor and powder cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was living a double life, right? 3 touchdowns here and hungover and blackouts here. And so as my life continued, my sophomore year, just exceptional. I was good. And so my sophomore year, I was third in the country in junior college in all-purpose running. And then I became a junior college All-American. And so even still to this day, May 12th of 2025, I still have about 16 or 18 records at my junior college that still stands today, And so when I walk on campus, I'm still recognized as the or one of the top running backs at my junior college. And so able to be successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
As they say, sometimes a double agent, right? And that's what my life was. It was a double agent because on the field, you put me on that gridiron, I'm gonna excel, but you get me off of it, and my life was a total
was
wreck.
in shambles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and so
we live those double lives, those fronts. We put those masks on until that mask comes off, and we can't even muster that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So my sophomore year, junior college All-American, started getting recruiting letters from like Stanford University, Montana State, Weber State, Northwestern, just to name a few of the big schools that was looking at me and not realizing how good I really was. And so I took the very first full ride scholarship that I received from Highland after I left Highland at Peru State College in Nebraska, small NAIA school. But by this time, my partying is literally off the chain. The blackouts, fighting on campus, and things of that sort. And so it was the summer of '85. God has a sense of humor in the midst of working out to get ready for the next upcoming football season and working a lot in the warehouse. I got off work one Friday morning, and me and a friend of mine went to the local bar and started drinking at 7 o'clock in the morning. And of course, back in those days, you could cash your payroll checks at the bar, which we did.
Wow.
And after working a 12-hour shift and started drinking, being on a motorcycle, we chose to go get a rental. We went in the van and we just kept partying and just kept drinking and went and got the drugs and just really living on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, he said, I can't hang no more. So he goes home and rests. I went to a bar and drank 2 more pitchers of beer. And that's the last I remember. I woke up in the hospital. I hit a telephone pole. I blacked out, literally blacked out. The only thing I can remember is the paramedics. The only thing I could say was, get me out of here, get me out of here. And even still to this day, I have a battery acid scar burn on my left arm just to remind me of God's grace and his hedge of protection in my life. I had told my coach, I'm not coming back football. I'm not coming back to school, down,
Wow.
depressed, but the humor of God allowed my teammate's car to break down 3 miles outside of Lawrence. He was on his way back to school,
Okay.
and he asked me, he said, "Hey, Barbie, do you think your father would take me back to Peru?" And I said, "I don't know, ask him." And my dad said, "Yeah, I'll take you back Sunday after church." And my dad looked at me and said, "You're riding." I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "No, you're riding to Peru." And going back to Peru that day, they were practicing. They stopped practice. My coach saw me. The teammates, "Hey, Barbie, we need you back." Now, mind you, this is 2 weeks after my car accident, so I'm still trying to rehab. And my coach said, "If you're back on campus next week, you can have your scholarship still." So I came back, got back on the football field, but I never was at my 100%, because of drugs, the car accident, and other things going on in my life. We went through that season.
What were
Came
the extent of your injuries with the car accident?
Well, I have a battery acid burn because I
Yeah.
was in a customized van, and so about the time I hit the telephone pole, it pushed the engine all the way in on me, and so I
Ooh.
have battery acid. I have a few scars on my head, of course, just as a
Okay.
reminder.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but it was nothing else that transpired besides, my emotional state.
Mm.
Eventually, I went back and played that year, and then the spring baseball. But by this time, my partying was I was out of control to the point that I remember the campus police waking me up and telling me
Oh.
I need to get down to the dean's office. And I went, and they said, "This is your dilemma. Either we charge you or we're going to kick you out of the school."
Mm.
And I said, "Kick me out." And still to this day, I don't know what I did. I do know I didn't kill nobody, or I wouldn't be sitting here.
Wow.
So here it is, my dream, now my destruction. Right now,
Did you ever think during this time, like, wow, I wish I could stop, or I need to stop, or
well, addiction when it gets to grips, right?
yeah.
You think you're gonna, I can stop anytime. It's not controlling me. You
Mm-hmm.
begin to lie to yourself and says, well, I won't drink all weekend. I'll just drink on Friday night and then recuperate Saturday. Well, an addict is going to go all the way through.
Yeah.
And so in the midst of that, I tell people this, I get recovery and I get the lingo and they say you need to change people, places, and things, but that's not a true statement because I'm always taking me with me.
That's right. Yeah. Wherever
Uh,
you go, there you are.
right. And I tell people a drug addict can find drugs in the middle of nowhere.
Oh,
They
yeah.
can. They'll find them. And so I chose to move to Chicago, dating a young lady. Let me get out of Lawrence. Let me change my surroundings. Let me
Okay.
change
Okay. So
my
we had
friends.
left Peru. You left Peru, went back to Lawrence.
Went back to Lawrence, moved to Chicago. Now this is 1988.
Okay.
Relationship fizzled out. Now I'm in the big city. Now my uh,
A lot
active
bigger than
addiction.
Lawrence, Kansas.
Yeah, the big city, the crack is
Mm-hmm.
clearing up our inner city. I'm an addict. Let me try it. And so at that particular time, I started using crack cocaine.
Mm.
Uh, just wandering here and wandering there, and trying to hide it to the point that eventually I lost my apartment there in the
Yeah,
city of
there's no way you
Chicago.
can hide crack addiction, okay?
Yeah,
Unless you
yeah,
have billions of dollars. Trust me, as the former proud crackhead, okay?
yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
clearly I was, always trying to plot on a way to keep my pride and
Hmm.
smoke crack all day
Yeah,
long.
yeah,
So, it was
yeah.
it was a hard life to live.
Oh
A lot of
yeah,
times went without,
yeah,
but
yeah,
trust me, I
yeah,
was always scheming a way to get some more.
yeah, yeah,
So when
yeah.
crack took over, that listen, and it doesn't take long for crack to take over your life. There's just
Oh no,
no way that you can
no,
maintain. Now
no,
continue. Now we're no longer functional because I've been
no.
there
So
too.
yeah, so now we're in Chicago. I'm wandering the streets. Went to a food pantry, and the lady says, "Sir, we don't have nothing left but a box of Cheerios on the shelf. You can have it if you want." And for 2 straight days, that's all I ate. Dry cereal, dry Cheerios. And so as I'm wandering the streets of Chicago, sleeping in dugouts, sleeping underneath park benches, that survival, right? It was late one night and I saw a light on and I went, and it was at a nursing home. And I rang the doorbell, and a lady came up, and I said, "Miss, I'm just hungry." And she gave me a peanut butter jelly sandwich and a can of Coke. And so I'm sitting there drinking and eating. Excuse me. And about this time, a police officer pulls up. And I said, sir, listen. I just came here. And she said, yes, sir. He wasn't. And he asked me to get in his car. And he drove me. Now I know it's at the corner of Madison and Austin there in West Side Chicago. And he talked to the bus driver. It's about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And the bus driver gave me a ride down Madison Street to State Avenue. And this is what he shared with me. He said, son, he said, just walk until you see the cross. And that was my first time ever walking into a homeless shelter there in downtown Chicago. Walked in, cried out to the Lord, deliver me, and not realizing that they had a discipleship program. So I stayed there for 6 months. In the midst of that, that's where I finally surrendered my call to the ministry there in 1991.
Ain't that some?
Yeah, delivered off drugs. Eventually, I met a young lady. 10 months later, we got married. Out of that marriage, 2 beautiful kids. I finally went back to school to get my degree at Trinity International University, just living a life. But sometimes in life, you meet somebody and then all of a sudden you recognize that you look across the room and you say, who is that person?
Now, are we still under the destruction?
Now we're underneath his grace.
That's right.
I got to the disgrace. And it was like my children's mother, educator, and looking across the room one day. And like I said, this time I got my degree. I'm in full-time ministry at Lawndale Christian Health Clinic on the west side of Chicago.
Wow, there. So we're still in Chicago.
Yeah.
Still making it happen. That's great. Okay.
Yes, still in Chicago. And so I'm starting to work on my master's degree. And so one day I just told my children's mother, I said, maybe we should think about separating so we could really look at our marriage. Well, eventually that led to put things in motion. She rented a U-Haul and she came to the house and she says, I'm leaving. And I said, I'm not carrying the box in and I'm not carrying the box out. I said, if you choose to leave, then so be it. And she did. So here I am working on my master's degree, coming home to an empty home. I was involved in my children's life with, my daughter's dancing and ballet practice and my son playing baseball. And so I would come home every day and pick up the voicemail and, the answer machine and no messages. And eventually I recognized that love had walked away. And so one day I was coming home. I went to my master's class that night and I came home and I looked around. I heard an old familiar voice I ain't heard in over 10 years. Now this is 10 years. This is 92. This is like 19. We went through the 90s, married, 2 kids, back in school, full-time ministry. This is like 1999, 2000. An old familiar voice said, you ain't had a drink of beer in over 10 years.
Yeah.
And I entertained it. I looked around, empty house, I ain't heard from my kids. And I said, you show right. So I went to the liquor store that night and grabbed me a 40 ounce. Didn't think nothing of it. 1 40 ounce, drank it, went to sleep. But at that time I was.
That's how they know this old story. That's how you know this. Oh, you had to go way back for the 40 ounces, okay?
Yeah. And so then that next Wednesday, I'm working my master's. I went straight to the liquor store, grabbed 2 40 ounces, came home, drank the 2, and that old familiar voice came, man, you ain't had a hit of crack in over 10 years.
Wow.
And I looked around and I said, you show right. So that particular night, I went out and I smoked over $700 worth of crack cocaine.
And wait, had not been in the game for over 10 years, but instantly was able to find some dope because it doesn't matter where you're at, you're still there. You got to treat
That's
that
it.
mental health. You got to treat
That's
that
it.
addiction. You got to treat
Yeah,
that
yeah.
spirit. You got to
That's
treat
it.
that everything.
That's it.
Everything. Total
That's it.
overhaul. Now,
That's it.
we haven't made it to the overhaul. $700 in one night and you didn't have a heart attack. You're right
No.
there with Rick James. I'm just kidding.
Right. On the South Side,
Dave
right.
Chappelle.
Yeah, and it's all of that, right? And then I just opened the door, literally, active addiction. And so it's 2000, 2001, I finally gave our home back to the mortgage company. And I said, well, let me get back around family. So I came back to Kansas, but I forgot I was bringing me with me.
So when you got there, you were already there doing
That's
the
it.
same stuff.
Same thing, right?
Ready to do the same stuff.
No change in my behavior, no change, right? And so
like when we tried for a couple of days,
Oh yeah.
Heart's in the right spot.
Good to be home. Yeah.
That
good to be home. Good
fun.
to see mom and dad, But from 2002 until 2005, my MO was this here: treatment, church, addiction, homelessness. Homelessness, and then treatment, church, and then addiction, homelessness. So I would bounce around from Lawrence, Kansas, and same thing, get back in church, find the drugs, the sickness of the disease. I would celebrate clean time.
Right.
That's sick. Think about that. I would celebrate clean time, which means now I'm not clean no more. I would go to a bar, they'd be like, man, what's the celebration? And I would say, I got 6 months clean. Well, I don't have clean now. Because my choices at that moment, right? Erase it.
You would get to a mile marker and be like, well, I made it here. That means I can go back and try a little bit more.
Right. Or control it.
Yeah.
And control it.
And so, that 6 months gives you a little time to get a little money together,
get a little weight,
get your weight up.
Back up. Yeah.
Feeling a little bit better about yourself. You're going to go at it with a different approach this time. We're going to smoke crack differently. It's going to be different.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And so by this time, I, bouncing from Kansas City to Lawrence, from Lawrence to Topeka, back and forth. By this time, my mom, she was sick with cancer, and my mom, she passed away August of 2005. Now we rewind the tape back to March of 2005. They're in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm homeless at this time, in the midst of my addiction. There was a guy that walked up to me and said, I was sleeping in the homeless shelter, and the guy walked and said, hey, does anybody know where to get any crack? They was like, well, Barbee does. So he came and woke me up, and he said, hey, you know to get some
bad reputation to have.
Right. And I said, yeah. I said, but but you're going to have to break me off something. Well, from March all the way up to July, me and this guy, we would meet up. I would tell him to park around the corner, park up the street. I'll be back. Well, we fast forward to July of 2005. It was July 20th. I tell people 3 minutes, 180 seconds, turn my life all the way around. This particular location was always, you could go there at 9 o'clock in the morning, you can get crack. You can go there at 9 o'clock at night, get crack. You go there at 1 o'clock in the night. It was the hot spot.
Right. Okay.
So this particular day I went and I knocked on the door and nobody answered. I was like, this is kind of strange. So I knocked again, nobody answered. So me and the young man, we went to another location and purchased some crack. So then I came back 2 days later and I knocked on the door and I went in for 3 minutes. That was it. Purchased some. He gave me $100. He introduced me to a guy. He said, this is my friend. Nice to meet you. I said, just make sure you break me some off. And so usually we go get high together. But this particular day he said, no, I can't go get high. Here, I'll break you off a little bit more. And he left. That was July 22nd of 2005. My mom passed in August of 2005. So now we fast forward to December of 2007. Living in Topeka, Kansas, working, got my own place in church, working in a warehouse. And one particular day, two guys walked on my job. And they said, Stephen Barbee? I'm like, yeah. They said, you're under arrest. I said, for what? They said, for 5 kilos of crack cocaine. I said, you got the wrong person.
Right.
And so they showed me a picture of me and they said, is this you? And I said, yeah. And so as we left Topeka, we had to come back through Lawrence. I said, at least let me call my dad and let him know what's going on. And they drove me down to the federal building and brought me in before the judge and said, you're charged with 5 kilos of crack cocaine. How do you plead not guilty? They let me get out on a signature bond. I'm like, man, 10 years to life. How did I get caught up?
Right. Like, I am not Pablo Escobar.
Right. But that 3 minutes on July 2nd, surveillance camera.
Okay. And you going in at that moment in time meant that, that's what they call ghost dope for the audience. People that don't know is when there's the dope that might exist. No one's been caught with it yet, but it did exist at one point in time. You might have something to do with it. Is that what happened to you or?
Yeah, but and I can go deeper on that too, because that particular day, I didn't find this out till later that the guy that I've been getting high with was a CI.
Oh, okay.
So from March until July, I was getting high, but then that particular day when he introduced me to an individual, that was an undercover cop. That's the reason why we couldn't go get high that day, but I didn't find that out till later. And so now I'm out on bond. And now my life is just being played out. How did Pastor Barbee's son get caught up in a 13-man federal drug conspiracy? How did Stephen Sherrill and Tasha's dad get caught up in a federal drug conspiracy? How can a former All-American get caught up in a federal drug? How can a licensed ordained minister get caught up? Right? Choices. Right. The choices. So from December of 2008, from 2007 all the way to June 2008, I was out on bond, going back and forth. My first lawyer dropped off because their dad had passed away. Then my second lawyer had to drop off because conflict of interest. When my second lawyer had to drop off because she had represented the CI 5 years prior.
Wow.
So then that's when she told me who the CI was by name. And so then I started putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Well, one day I had to give random UAs and it went, Sarita went 2 weeks. They didn't call my name. And I'm sitting here just, man, right? I'm still facing 10 days. So it was a Friday night. I said, man, let me go get a $50 piece of crack and let me go get not a pint, but let me get just a half pint of vodka and I drank. The next morning I called on a Saturday.
It was time to go in and drop.
And I went in and couldn't flush my system and went in, gave the UA Saturday at 8:05. The probation office called me at 8:05, said, Mr. Barbee, how you doing? I'm like, great. Here I am lying again, right? And I said, I'm doing great. I said, no, you're not. And they said, what we're looking at right now is a positive drug that you submitted, UA. And we're writing a warrant for your arrest.
Woof.
And so I used to do like dumb stuff to support my habit. I would write bad checks on my own, let the checks bounce, shoplifting. So I had a court date in Lawrence. Never forget, it was June. I walked in and the prosecutor stood up and said, Your Honor, we drop all charges against Mr. Barbee. You know how we do. Ooh, ain't God good, right?
Yeah.
And I thought I was leaving. But he said, no, Mr. Barbee has something much more that he's facing.
Those federal charges.
Yeah. And so the marshals, they arrested me and the marshals came and picked me up.
From the courthouse?
Well, eventually from the local detention center. I sat there for a couple of weeks, how paperwork and they got to find.
Yeah.
And so at that time, that was when God locked me up because he'd get ready to free me up.
Hmm.
And so from June of 2008 all the way up until August of 2009, I'm back and forth to court, going to staying there at CCA in Leavenworth, Kansas. And, God's favor, right? Because if
Mm.
you know scripture and understand scripture, it says there in Romans 11:29, the gifts and calling of God are without repentance, which means God does not change. If he calls you, he calls you. Now, if you don't answer the calls went out. And so God's favor was literally on me. That
Mm.
I found favor at the detention center, able to walk the detention center unescorted. The wardens knew me, the captains knew me, the lieutenants knew me. And so eventually I did get sentenced August 28th of 2009 to 70 months in federal prison.
Wow, 70 months. Is that 6 years?
It's 2 months short of 6.
Okay.
And so now, mind you, that day when I went in and the surveillance camera, I came out 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It was only $100 purchase.
Right.
So about the size of your thumb.
Mm-hmm.
That's what got me 70 months.
Wow.
But as you was talking earlier, let me educate the audience. So when you're talking earlier about ghost dope,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a mandatory minimum of 5 grams of crack cocaine, right? 5 grams that gets you a mandatory, right? If you got 5 grams, it's a mandatory. The law says it's mandatory that you get this much time.
Okay.
I only had 1.06 grams controlled sale. So because of the way the drug conspiracy was set up, and those that owned the apartment building, and those that had 2 or 3 other apartments, and those that had business in Missouri that was connected to this case, they already had the big guys.
Okay.
I was nothing but a street user and a hustler.
Mm-hmm.
So how did I get the 70 months? Because the one controlled sale was 1.06 grams. Well, when they raided the place and raided the apartment, they began to scrape up all the crack on the counter and all the crack in the shelves. There was 59 grams of crack cocaine.
Okay.
So who can we put this 59 grams of crack cocaine on? Well, in order to keep Mr. Barbee in this 13-man federal drug conspiracy, we got to put this on him.
Wow.
Yeah. Which pushed me over the 5 gram limit, which made there was a mandatory that they had to give me a certain sentence.
Amount of time. Wow.
And so now I'm in the system, never been to prison, And I began to allow God to break me. You see, God only uses broken pieces. See, our wholeness doesn't feed anybody. When you look in the Bible, when Jesus fed the 5,000, what did he do? He took a loaf of bread that was whole.
Broke it.
Wait a minute, he blessed it. Then he broke it.
Yes.
Right?
There he went. Yes.
As soon as he broke it, it fed the multitude. As long as the bread was whole, nobody got fed. You see, the enemy does not want us to share our brokenness because we think our brokenness will bring shame. No, our brokenness will feed the multitude. You see, my homelessness feeds the multitude. My drug addiction feeds the multitude. My incarceration feeds the multitude. And I share with people, share your shame. Don't bury it. Share it, because the enemy knows it's going to feed the multitudes. And so as I was going through this journey of incarceration and God, my first place of work detail was in religious services. So I'm able to get a free education through the government because now I can experience all these different religions.
Okay.
I had to serve the Muslims. I had to put their mats out on every Friday. I had to serve the Hebrew Israelites. I had to serve the Santorians. I had to serve the Native Americans. I had to serve all these different religions, right? Because God calls us to serve.
Absolutely.
But as I served, watch this here, I was learning. I was learning. So if a Muslim came up and asked me about my Christian faith, I was able to listen to his view, but then I had the biblical foundation. Because see what happens is a lot of believers today, they don't know how to articulate the word of God.
Yeah, well, it says it is good for reproving and
Correct.
setting things straight. So let it interpret itself.
Yeah. And so as I began to use my biblical calling and my gifts in prison, it was a blessing because I began to deal with my demons of addiction. I began to face them, and I began to process myself and look at those times when I struggled, right? Those times when I was in the midst of my misery and my darkness. And so in the federal system, if you admit that you got a problem with drugs or alcohol, they put you in the RDAP program. So I had to leave Pekin, Illinois.
Tell us what that stands for.
The Residential Drug and Alcohol Program. So I was in Pekin, Illinois. They did not have an RDAP. They had to ship me from Pekin to Forest City, Arkansas, which I tell people, Conair, you may watch the movie, but it's a real airline.
Wow.
Yeah, I flew on it twice. Shackled up, handcuffed,
And this is just the whole airline full of prisoners.
Yes. Nicolas Cage. Yeah, Nicolas Cage ain't on the flight like in the movie. But so I flew on that, went down to Forest City, Arkansas, was able to get my work detailed there in the religious services, and began to unpack, right, my way of thinking, right, how I look at drugs and how I look at my personality, what's my triggers. And because of that, it really allowed me to go deep in the way I look at drugs and don't glorify them. And so in the midst of that, I asked myself one question. I said, how many times was you arrested sober?
Wow.
Never. And I told myself that day in Forest City, Arkansas, in my prison cell, God, as long as I walk in your deliverance, I would never be sitting in a cell, nor would I have to wear the silver handcuffs. And by God's grace, I haven't.
Amen.
By God's grace. And so now we're finishing up with RDAP, and we're getting to the end of my incarceration because I was able to get 11 months taken off my sentence. So I only served 44 months. January 18, 2012, I come back to Kansas City. I came back with just faith and God, and that was enough. And because I began this, as society says, re-entry, I call it my journey back in, because the dreams was gone because of the sports, the disgrace of getting kicked out of school, the disgrace of prison, the disgrace, right? And now God has me on the road of deliverance.
Yeah, and you realize that prison isn't always a disgrace. That's a great opportunity for us to be on a missionary trip and really get ourselves right. And I was just talking to a friend yesterday who's justice impacted, and I had to hit her with Matthew 7:1, stop judging, judge not lest ye be judged. But we were talking about how just reentry as a whole. Just as a whole, when you're coming home, how you feel, and just, it's a journey, but it's there's all sorts of facets to it.
Yes, it is. And God, looking back as we sit today, was allowing me to experience reentry because he was preparing me for reentry. And so I did not know where to go to get my ID. But today I do. Back then, when I got out, did not know where the DMV is, didn't know what resources were in the community. But because of my journey, I was able to find out where these resources are, right?
Right. And you know what? And God's always been there. But it seems like we get a lot more attentive when when we go to prison. And you know what? And people are like, oh, you go and find him. No, it's not find him. He's been here this whole time.
It
was us, and we became reacquainted because he was waiting.
That's right. And so just my whole journey, 73 days after my release, gainfully employed at City Union Mission,
Nice.
begin to give back into the community. And because, trying to move and do things and worked a part-time job, eventually I left City Union Mission, went and worked at Metro Lutheran Ministries here in Kansas City. I was their program coordinator. And because of the work that they do here in the community, I mean, they pay utilities, they have the food pantry and other types of supportive services. They received a grant from Missouri Department of Correction. And my supervisor said, who better to oversee this grant but you? And so as men and women begin to come in with their needs and able to, get them resources, housing, jobs, and
workforce development. People just don't realize how important that is to the holistic healing. You got to be able to support yourself.
Yeah. So I, left there, and then I went to a Connections to Success, where I was a community outreach manager, and that took me to another level, a different platform of recruiting over 350 individuals to go through their 12-day training of personal professional development training, able to go to the different prisons, meet with the wardens, meet with the chaplains, and bring in programming and recruit men and women. So when they come home, the bridge is already built. They just have to transition. I was there for 3 years, was able to speak at the Fatherhood Conference there in Minneapolis, Minnesota, spoke at the Fatherhood Conference there in Richmond, Virginia. God was just wowing my world, right? Flying out to San Diego, California, and speaking at.
And what year is this? So now we're in.
Yeah, we're in, let's see, 2017, 2018, because I got released.
Wow, and things are moving. Things are moving. When do you get back into the prison?
Was that, well, with Metro Lutherans, I got a chance to go back in, Connection to Success, regularly going back in. And right in the middle of the pandemic, Holy Spirit told me to leave Connections. I wrestled with God for a whole night, listening to YouTube ministry and motivational. And the statement was made, God is waiting for you to leave. And so I literally wrestled and cried all night. And I said, Lord, why and when? And he said, now. Now, mind you, this was my best paying job ever in my life. But I submitted and surrendered to the now, and I left. And Connections called me and said, well, Stephen, can you come to the office? What can we do to keep you? I said, you can't keep me. And they said, but where are you going? If another agency done hired you, who is it? I said, it's nobody. But out of that leap of faith, I developed P2P. It stands for passion to purpose. Because life has a purpose. But if you understand your passion will reveal your purpose. And so since that time, the platform God has given me is the P2P, able to go into different prisons, goodwill organizations across the city, across the state. But there came a point there in 2021, a good friend of mine, he was at Connections. He left Connections and went to Prison Fellowship. Prison Fellowship hired him, Jermaine Wilson, promoted him from field director to, he went from field to regional director, vacated his position, and I slid in to his position. So for 2 years, I was the field director for Prison Fellowship Ministries.
I love Prison Fellowship. Shout out Prison Fellowship.
Yeah. So literally placed me over 21 prisons in Missouri and 15 in Kansas. I was able to take programming and ministry and all of that. And so God has been, gracious to the call.
Amen.
Gracious to the fall, right? The greater the call, the greater the fall.
You got to go through the fire. You have to go through the fire to get refined and come out and be able to tell that story and be able to, encourage others. And just like you said, if you're not going through it, then you don't have that testimony. I can't go, I can't tell somebody about something that I haven't experienced myself only as well as someone who has.
Yes. And, God has taken it for his glory. I've gone back inside of prison. Once I went into Cameron, I had about 80 men in the room. And I said, would everybody please stand? And one man was so defiant, he wouldn't stand. And I said, young man, you will stand because I sat where you sat. and he got up. Why? Because my experience, right? They
You
say
weren't
give
just
us.
someone coming in.
That's it. That's it. And
Yeah.
I share with people, tell your story. Certain people say, well, Stephen, I don't have a story like you. And I said, that's God. I had certain people say, well, I never drank, I never smoked, I never been to prison. I said, that's your story. That needs to be told. It don't have to be the gloom and doom and homelessness and prison. I said,
No.
whatever you experience, tell your story. I just want to encourage your listeners, tell your story, because your story is the broken pieces that will feed the multitudes. Tell your story. And people say, well, Mr. Stephen, where did you start telling your story? When I first got out, I was telling my stories at Kentucky Fried Chicken to the cashier. While she getting my food together, I said, Miss, let me share something.
Praise and worship and testimony.
Right. At the bus stop.
I can't wait to tell people. Yes.
At the bus stop, right? At the bus stop, I would tell my story. And so it's just in the midst of telling your story that brings God glory that he says, okay, now I'm ready to open another door. So, since that time, God has really opened doors for me with the P2P. I've able to take it into RAPEC school districts, able to go back inside the prisons, just started a new recovery ministry there at First Baptist Church in Kansas City, Kansas on the second Monday, Break Free Ministries.
Amen.
I've also connected with OCL, which stands for Outstanding Choices Living. It's a transitional living program here in Kansas City. And it's because of the broken pieces.
Okay, well, Stephen,
broken pieces.
Let me tell you, it is because of the broken pieces.
Yes,
and when we get back together, even better. Let me tell you this.
Yes.
What a pleasure it has been to have you on the show.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm so appreciative. Now, let me tell you, I know you're very active on LinkedIn. We can find you on there. You're a motivational speaker, you're inspirational. Yes. Just having you on the show, what a blessing. How do we find you? What do you got going on? Tell us all about it.
It's you can find me at www.stephenbarbee.com. That's STEPHENBARBEE.com. And then you can also look under p2pkc.org. You see my teaching, my ministry platform that God has given me. And that's where you can find me. And so,
hit us with the 4 again. Hit us with the 4.
That? Dreams, destruction, disgrace, and deliverance.
Deliverance. On that note, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to I want to thank Stephen again for coming on. I want to thank all these divine connections that we're able to make in between each other. And I want to thank the audience for tuning in. Thank you. Come back again and join us for more thoughts.